Members, we have the quorum and it's the appointed time. Let's call the meeting to order. There are 5 discussion papers for this meeting. Before the meeting, the government has submitted paper ECI 2017-18-15 for members to consider, and the paper sets out the latest changes in directorate establishment approved since 2002 and changes to directorate establishment in relation to the 5 discussion items. So I'd like to remind members that if you have a direct or indirect pecuniary interest in the matters to be discussed today, please, in accordance with Rules of Procedures 83A, disclose the nature of that interest before you speak. And I would like to bring members' attention to ROP 84 in relation to the voting when you have a pecuniary interest. So let's continue with scrutinizing item 1, EC 2017-18-15, and that is to retain 3 supernumerary posts of the Highways Department, and that is the 1 Principal Government Engineer D3 with effect from 1st of January 2018 or upon approval of the Finance Committee, whichever is later, to 31st of December 2020, and 2 Chief Engineers at D1 with effect from 1st of January 2018 or upon approval of the FC, whichever is later, to 31st of December 2019. And to extend the redeployment of the following permanent posts, and is 1 Chief Engineer D1 with effect from 1st of January 2018 or upon approval of the FC, whichever is later on to the 31st of December 2020. This is to continue to provide directorate support for taking forward projects including Tuen Mun Western Bypass and the remaining works of the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge Hong Kong section. I've introduced the officials last time, so I'm not going to introduce them now. Mr. Leung Yu-chung was supposedly asking a question, but Mr. Leung Yu-chung said that he doesn't have a question now. Mr. Eddie Ju, 3rd round, 3 minutes. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank the administration for providing a supplementary paper on my response last time, but you have only 3 paragraphs. I am talking about ESC 1718 bracket 01. Director, can you present a diagram to us so that we can understand what you mean by the tunnel alignment lowered by approximately 10 meters in relation to the Tuen Mun Western link? Can you present a diagram to us to illustrate the figures you set here? I don't think we understand what you are talking about here. So that's point number 1. Number 2, you talked about that in 2015, based on the latest investigation results, a risk assessment was conducted, and the results show that if the stone columns cannot be fully grouted, then there is high risk to be involved or incurred. As we asked last time, if you planned originally to have the tunnel alignment below the stone columns, so before 2015, have you ever considered that there was an unacceptable high risk? Because members were talking about liability last time. How come that you designed it in a way that the alignment could go through it, but then there was high risk and then you lowered it by 10 meters, and then that resulted in years of delay, and we aren't yet sure about the cost overrun? And thirdly, I hope that the administration can give us the report of the independent expert. Just don't tell us that you've received there is a report from the expert and this is the only feasible option. We need figures from you, and we need the reports compiled by the consultant or the expert. 3 questions there. Director, thank you, Mr. Ji, for your question. the member would like to have a diagram or plan to show the locations and so on. We can prepare that later. I would like to have a picture before and after the redesign. How it went through, it should have went through the stone columns, and now is not going through, and also the depth, and also the steel cellular structure, the depth of that. So can you give us the plans before and after? Yes, we can provide the plans to you. Can I continue with my reply? There is no other person queuing up, so you can continue. So can I give you a consolidated reply to your second and third questions? On this contract, on the Tuen Mun Link Northern Connection, this is a designed and build contract. The contractor came up with the design. The member asked, was it the case that previously we thought that the alignment could go through, and then later we found that there were high risks? For this kind of works, especially at this particular location, at the initial stage, there was no reclaimed land. In other words, the information we provided to the contractor was information relating to the seabed and what was below it. And we told them about the design for the reclamation. And they were using the tunnel boring machines, TBMs, to go through such locations where full information was not available back then. So when they actually came to the works, before the works, they had to do some geological or ground investigation. And by that, they also did a risk assessment. So when they had the latest information on the geological situation, especially we put in the stone columns at the reclaimed plot, they got the information after the geological investigation, and they found that the risk was too high. So therefore, they suggested that the tunnel alignment should be lowered by 10 meters. So that's how the chronology went. And the member asked about the independent expert report. We had to be very careful on how to deal with this. As what the member said, there was still the question of liability pending. There were so many issues relating to liability which had yet to be sorted out. And the contractor had made many claims too. So given that this is the case, we have to be very careful in dealing with such information, whether it is suitable to be made public, because that will have a bearing on our dealing with the claims made by the contractor. While you are in the fourth round, yes, you can continue. Is your fourth round. We know that there will be claims to be made against you, and for the 2015 report, I think it was made known back then, and you will not change the content, right? So I don't see any problem of making this public. This is a very important document for the public because it led to significant variations to the order, so I think it should be made public. Madam Chair, in paragraph 14, it says that the PM project manager will still have to attend meetings with representatives of the mainland government and the Macau government. And he had to attends regular meetings of the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge Authority. From 2009 up to now, this officer should have attended this ZMB authority meetings, but then nothing was heard from him. We knew about the latest situation of the main bridge, how many work accidents were there, how many workers were injured, and how many fatalities were there. And then there was the question of the loans in 2009, and there was cost overrun of the main bridge, and the officer hasn't made any information available to us. What they had discussed in their regular meetings, never was that kind of information made public. So I would put the question to the administration: would you still be putting up with this kind of arrangement? We seem to be falling into a dark hole or bottomless pit. Now, Mr. Editor, you can follow up those issues at the development panel, because we are talking about the continuation of this post. We must review his performance in the past, and we place hopes in the future. So would it be the case that when this officer attends these meetings, he will cover up all the information and he's not giving out any information to the public on the main bridge? So the administration, can you tell us how this officer will discharge his duties, especially on the aspects mentioned by Mr. Zhu? Mr. Zhu, thank you for your question. We want to extend these several posts. These are related to the main bridge. Now, upon the commissioning of the bridge, the post will continue. The post holder will continue to oversee the operation. So they're directly related. Thank you. So that's why I have expectations on you, having regard to what's happened in the past few years. So how much you have borrowed out in your loan, what is the interest rate, what is the cost overrun. We are kept in the dark, and I think this post holder has been negligent in his duty in the past, because he's been attending these meetings all the time. So are these duties going to be covered by this post holder? Would you be responding to us in the development panel meeting? Let me supplement. Well, let's talk about the apportionment of the construction cost among the three parties, and how we're going to finance the bridge. All along, we've been reporting regularly to the electrical, and when it was first approved, we reported the situation to the electrical, and we'll also update you on the progress.
So this was mainly for the engineering issues. The financing arrangements merely explain at the development panel. Mr. Chu, any questions? Yes, I have. However, Mr. Wu Chi-Wai have pressed the button. Mr. Wu, fifth round. Thank you, Chairman. Remember, I've been following up on the second phase works of the HCMB bridge. The document stated that it was respond to the vehicular and visitors flow of the commissioning to decide on the timetable. At the last meeting, the Director of Highways promised that it will start as soon as possible. So I would like him to explain that when do we embark on the second phase? Thank you for Mr. Wu's question. Back in the end of 2015 and beginning of 2016, when applying for extra funding, we have provided supplementary information in which we mentioned that the second phase of works will start upon the commissioning, which included that some review in the works, and will arrange for the second phase to commence. Chairman, I would like one more question. So this is different from what is mentioned on the para 9. They claim that it would address would decide on the basis of passenger and traffic flows following commissioning. Chairman, like I said, The original design had expected there will be a second phase of works. If we delay the second phase too much, as time progresses, the cost will rise. So, from the administration perspective, the earlier to commence that there was an actual need for that. Any other member would like to speak? Mr. Chu, fifth round. I very much disagree with the Deputy Assistant Secretary that which THB gave an account. There's never been a clear account. That how much are we borrowed from the Bank of China for the main bridge, and how much do we need to repay every year of such figures and so on. Please stop deceiving Hong Kong people. May I ask the Director of Highways, and you notice that one newspaper, once in a while, will quote the consultancy's data of the main bridge to highlight all the flaws in the project. The most recent it will be that circular steel cells, two of them, as mentioned in the press, that have been settled or subsided by 600 every year, will be subsiding 600 to 800 meters, and then the department denied this. So the news. So can you come up with a database that provided data on the subsiding and the settlement of this steel circular structures? You can just disclose what the consultancy have told you, so that the public and newspaper could stop speculating or leak the news and have this cycle to stop. Mr. Chu, what you requested, is it directly relevant to this post? These are engineering related. So they're responsible for implementing the projects. And how do these projects that enable the public that the project is going on smoothly? This depends on the information dissemination. If you read the article, every 3 to 4 months the HCMB will come up with this latest round of scandal. Where the scandal now, we don't know, because we don't know what is the accurate data from the Bureau. And now that through the environmental impact assessment, the Bureau would need to deliver some data in relating to some pollution matters. So why would it, as a subsidence of these major structures, or whether it moved or deviated, have all become confidential information? Why can't they disclose it to the public frankly? Let me make clear that the press reports may not represent the truth. And the projects mentioned had already been completed. So we're currently following, and this post is to respond for the follow-up work. And whether this sort of information should be disclosed, that whenever the media or the members would like to know, we always keep a clean account in response. Mr. Wu-Chi-Wai, 6th round. Thank you, Chairman. I would like to make a comment in response to the director's comments, which I'm very disappointed. The parent number 9 is not fabricated by me. It states very clearly that to address the long-term operation needs to the second phase of the HKBCF project. The implementation schedule will be decided on the basis on the passenger and traffic flow. So it doesn't mention that it will start right away. So the way it is written, and it's different from how the Director of Highway plan to implement. That the members will distrust the director's way of handling of such documents. Expressing very deep disappointment, even though we have some opinions, is mainly directly against the documents. So why what the director said is different, or going the other way, is totally different from what is mentioned in the paper? I don't have further supplement. However, I understand or noted Mr. Wu's views. Mr. Ray Chen, third round. I'd like to follow up on the HCMB bridge. So for the tunnel of the Tuen Mun Western link, they have been leaking in the tunnels, and the government response claimed that the works had not been formally completed and yet to be waterproofed, and the contractor had addressed the problem at its own expense. I found the whole thing unacceptable, even though the contractor claimed he had fixed the problem. Besides reviewing the liabilities of the contractors, have you reviewed whether anyone held accountable in the HCMB, especially the chief engineering special duty? So does that post would be held accountable? Thank you for Mr. Chan's question. And for the Tuen Mun Western link contract, I mentioned repeatedly that this is a design and construction project. In response to the claim that water is seeping into the tunnel, mentioned by the members, that happened. We have this emergent access between the two tunnels, which are smaller in size, that is used to connect the two main tunnels. So the water entering the tunnel that happened when we were able to complete the permanent waterproofing of the small tunnel. And the contractor, as the tunnel was designed by him, and he should be held responsible. And within a short time, this had already been addressed. And learning from this experience, the contractor has strengthened the temporary waterproofing. And from then on, and when conducting tunnel boring, no such incidents have been reported. And now that we have finished the construction of the tunnel, and therefore incidents like this should not happen again. In view of the whole circumstances, I don't think the corresponding colleague will need to be accountable for this. I'm just citing an example. Let's say case in point, in which the director claimed the contractor responsible for main design and construction. So what is the government's role in supervision? So let's say he messed up at the end, he fixed it and managed to deliver. Because and this is the contractor responsibility. So what are the responsibility and accountability for the chief engineer? Director? And for the daily management of the project, we engaged the consultancies for that. And of course, our we'll call it, we need to supervise the progress. However, for the daily procedure specific, that will be handled by the consultants. Dr. Fernando Cheung, fourth round. I would like to find out more about the job portfolio of these proposed positions. For the tunnel that need to be lowered by 10 meters, and one of the reasons that's provided by the supplementary document, we have been given more details that the original design was supposed to drill through the stone columns or pass through the stone columns. However, based on the latest risk assessment and the grouting procedure does not go as originally planned, thus there are heightened risk, and the government had an independent expert conducting a study and offer advice and so on. And of course, they're a contractor, and there's also a consultancy to supervise its work. If there are any problems or any variation, and the government will engage an independent expert to look into it. So up to now, we haven't quite found out who should be responsible. At the previous meeting, the director of highways mentioned that it is still a discussion. So how much is this the fault of the responsibility of the contractor? How much is that of the consultants? Or how much of this responsibility should be borne by the administration due to negligent oversights? So for this proposed post, how do they clearly delineate their responsibilities? So in the day-to-day, we have the consultancies, and in special circumstances, we have the independent experts. So what are these chief engineers for? Director of Highways? Thank you for Dr. Cheng's question. So Dr. Cheng has been correct in that for the day-to-day project management, the contractor did the work and then supervised by a consultancy. Of course, our colleagues will monitor the progress or monitor for any potential issues. Like the scenario you mentioned, that if there are situations that where we come across some difficulty, let's say in this case, the contractor suggested lowering the alignment, and the role of our colleagues would be critical because of course, the consultant would look into the contractor's proposal and consider whether it is feasible.
But we do not totally rely on the consultant. We would independently look at the rationale and whether the grounds are substantiated before we make a decision. Whenever there are substantial changes proposed, particularly in relation to complex technical issues, we will also engage independent experts to provide independent advice to us. So after considering all these, we will come to a decision. So at these critical junctures, our colleagues will play a very significant role. And going forward, for these posts which are proposed to be extended, the post holders will deal particularly with dealing with claims. As mentioned in the paper, the claim amount is really substantial. And our colleagues will be the gatekeeper here to ensure that public funds are put to the best use. If we don't do gatekeeping and we don't have the appropriate colleagues to deal with these claims, we can't ensure that these claims will be dealt with appropriately. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Eddie G, you have asked a lot of questions. What are the questions you have? Last round. Is it Dr. Fernando Zhang first? Who? So you go first, Dr. Zhang. The director just now said about something about the claims. I note that for the posts proposed, some of them will last till the end of 2020, others 2019, end of 2019. So going by past experience, these claims handling will take a long time. The claims won't be dealt with even after the projects have been completed. So these post holders are to handle such claims. And maybe some arbitration may be involved, and cases may be taken to the court as well. So these posts are very important. But for the time frame you propose, is it realistic? If the claims go beyond 2020, well, that would not be surprising. So does it mean that you will come back and apply for an extension again later? Director, thank you. Dr. Zhang, for your question. We propose the post be extended to 2019 and 2020. That is proposed based on our estimate of the project completion date. And we have also taken into account the time needed to handle the claims. As mentioned in the paper, in 2019 and 2020, around the middle of those 2 years, we will conduct a review. On the manpower situation then, and if there is a need to further extend the post, we will come back to the electrical to apply for the same. In any case, during this period, we will try to do our best and handle all the issues needed to be handled. Mr. Eddie Ju, it will be your last round. Thank you, Madam Chair. Director, can you give a specific answer to Oriental Daily's report in early this year? I've quoted that in the Link Road and the Hong Kong and the artificial island for the steel cellular structure, the subsidence is particularly serious. The paper quoted the consultant that every year 800 millimeters are subsidence. The administration's responses from January 2017 to 2018 is the subsidence is 13 to 70 centimeters. How come that you think that's an acceptable figure? But what about the 800 millimeters? Is it plucked out of thin air or what? How does it come about? And is the consultant making up the figures to frame you or what? Any response? Well, thank you, Mr. G, for your question. We have explained that for such reclamation works and seawall works, subsidence in 50 years is about 500 mm. In the initial stage, the subsidence level will be faster and it gets lower later on. So in the first year, 130 to 170 mm is the figure. The consultant has looked at these figures and they think that's acceptable because later on the pace will get slower. You can appreciate that because it's not solidified enough, so to speak, in the initial stage, but as the subsidence goes on, the subsidence pace will get slower. That's just normal. And that happens to every kind of reclamation project. But what about the consultant, given you the figure, and you said the figure is fake? Have you tried to ask them who gave out the information? Now, the member mentioned about this figure that was in the newspaper report, but as I said, well, the report said that 2 consultants helped you measure the subsidence. One came up with a figure of 800 mm. I mean, was it the case that there was no consultant giving you that figure? In our response to the newspaper, we have made ourselves very clear already. We haven't received the figure as quoted by the newspaper from the consultant. Well, Director, in the future, maybe after such reports have been published, you can issue a statement to refute the allegations. Yes, we did that. Within a day or two, we have already responded to that figure. We had already done our best. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Leung Yu-chung, second round. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to follow up on Dr. Fai Leng-Zhang's question about the role of the post holder. Second round? Third round? Oh, second round. So what? Second round. I got it wrong, sorry. I understand this. If you are to handle claims, and if there is one staff member who has been following up on all these, and it would be best if he can continue with that task all the time. But in terms of the claims, dealing with the claims, and the government is very much in a passive role, do you have a time limit for the contractor to lodge their claims? If they don't lodge the claims within the period of the post, and then it will go. Then that's not good enough. So can not the permanent post holders take on those tasks? Can't the duties be transferred to some permanent post holders? The government has been telling us that no one is indispensable. Recently, I've been helping the victims of an industrial building to lodge claims. It's been gone on for 18 years already. And many of the people in the government have left, and there is a change in the staff. So must it be the case that these post holders should continue with handling the claims, and the other permanent post holders can't handle them? Yes, there is indeed a time limit for lodging claims. For all contracts, there is a retrospective period. So it's not the case that claims can be lodged a long time after the works have been completed. Now, in terms of manpower, as I explained, we are proposing that these posts be extended to 2019 and 2020. In mid-2019 and mid-2020, a review will again be conducted. By then, we will not just be asking for extension of these posts for handling the claims only. As pointed out by Mr. Leung, there have been cases in the past where a project has been completed. The permanent post holders in other works can deal with the remaining works of the projects. And as to how the situation is going to be like, a review will be conducted in mid-2019 and 2020. Now, you have the time limit, and you know roughly when the works will be completed. So when do you expect the last claims be lodged? It's very difficult to guesstimate. Let me cite an example. For a major project, around 2009, that project was completed. But the claims have just been dealt with recently. Well, there are a lot of procedures to go through. Some even have to be resolved through arbitration. So that takes a long time. Now, as to exactly how long will it take to handle all the claims, it depends on the complexity of the claims and also whether the relevant contractors can accept resolution, say, through mediation. Of course, the government has its own stance as well. Dr. Zhang, sixth round. Madam Chair, on the alignment of the subsea tunnel lowering by 10 meters, there have been different reports on this issue. On the 2nd of January 2018, Oriental Daily said that the contractor has asked for $1.1 billion in claims. There has not been consensus. And on the 17th of May 2017, Tai Kung Po said that these claims are reasonably high in terms of its amount. So I get worried. I wonder whether these post holders can really help control costs. If we are talking about claims amounting to over $10 billion and there is no consensus reached and no solution is in sight, would that be serious overspending in the future? So can the director update us on how the situation is like? Thank you, Dr. Zhang, for your question. There have been many media reports. I don't know where they got the information from, but in our paper, we have listed the claims amounts, the total claim amounts. You can see that the figure is not like what Dr. Zhang quoted. Well, it's important. Actually, our colleagues have played an important role in all these, and we have given you the most updated figures here. Our colleague has to do a lot in relation to such claims. It would not be the case. It would be over $10 billion. No, that would not be the case. Another question. On the works of the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macao Bridge, can the government give us the figures on the work accidents or work injuries? For example, Hong Kong broken down by the Hong Kong section and non-Hong Kong sections, starting from the commencement of the works, because that has all along that figure has not been disclosed. For the Hong Kong section, sometimes figures are given out, but for the entire bridge, we have never been given the information.
And for the Hong Kong section, we have such information and we have disclosed them. If members need them, after we compile them and we can supplement them after the meeting. As for the entire bridge project, as it involved different governments, and we have Macau and Zhuhai, and we have the main bridge, which have all three governments, so we don't have such information. Not all projects are managed by the HCMB authority. The authority only responsible for the main bridge part. Do you have such information at hand for the industrial work-related casualties or injuries? So what do you have in hand? For the main bridge, we have them. For the main bridge from the commencement to now, we have 9 fatal accidents in which 9 workers have passed away as a result. Any other questions, members? This is just only the Hong Kong section. So you mentioned this for the first time. In early occasions, you mentioned there were 11 deaths on the Hong Kong Connection Road. Can you give a detailed account of these 9 deaths? What time what are the circumstances, which contractor, can you supplement after the meeting? Yes. If we can get them, we can provide them after the meeting. I remember that the Hong Kong side admitted only 9 deaths. The Hong Kong section is different. They have some other figures, so we can provide them in one go. Please provide them after the meeting. Thank you. Okay, members. Mu-Chik-Wai, you still have questions? You have asked many rounds already. Okay, 1 minute. Okay, last time. Okay, just very simple question. However, I want you to put them on record. And in this document, especially the contents of parent 9, to me, is almost amount to the government submitting a fake document, which is a major mistake on the government's part. Unless the director wish to correct or rectify this document. So how are we holding a document that's different to what the director has said? So the director claims just refused to answer and don't plan to address this. I don't find this acceptable. So your comments have been noted. Director, any comments? Okay, if not, maybe before submitting to the Finance Committee, you can probably explain in writing or not through to Mr. Wu. Chairman, I have nothing further to add. I hope that you can explain it to Mr. Wu after the meeting. Since there are no other questions, we shall put it to a vote. For those who are in favor, please put up your hand. Okay, so let's ring the bell now. Let's put up your hand first. Okay, let's ring the bell now.
好啦，而家表決。
Time's up. Please vote. Before we announce the results, please validate your vote. So please stop voting and show the results. 21 present, 9 in favor, 8 object, 3 abstentions. This item is approved. The members would like to have a separate voting at the FC? Yes. Item number 2, the Government Secretary, Transport and Housing Bureau, Transport Branch. The members invite to recommend to Finance Committee the retention of 3 supernumerary directory posts in the Airport Expansion Project Coordination Office, Transport Branch of THB for 7 years. 1 Principal Government Engineer D3, 1 Administrative Officer Staff Grade C D2, and 1 Chief Engineer D1 for the period of 7 years, from 1st of April 2018 to 31st of March 2025, in order to supervise the work of Airport Authority of Hong Kong as we coordinate relevant parties for the implementation of the 3 one-way system project. And the public officers present, we have Mr. Joseph Lai, Permanent Secretary for Transport and Housing Transport, Mr. Wallace Lau, Deputy Secretary for Transport and Housing Transport 4, and Mr. Raymond Cheng, Head, Airport Expansion Project Coordination Office. As the chairman of the Economic Development Panel is not a member of this panel and not able to attend the meeting, so I would just give out the highlights of the discussion from the EAP panel. And the Economic Development Panel have this at its November 27th meeting have discussed that retention of the 3 supernumerary director posts of the Airport Expansion Project Coordination Office, AEPCO, in order to monitor the work of the Airport Authority Hong Kong and coordinate relevant parties to implementation with the 3 one-way system 3RS project concept. The members have offered general support, and the members who cared most concerned about whether the 3RS project can be completed on time and within schedule, and urged the administration to explain the relevant monitoring mechanism. And members also of the view that the administration, depending on the progress of the 3RS project, to consider redeploying the manpower deployment of the APPCO. And the first member with question is Dr. Kwok Ka-ki, first round. Chairman, the biggest problem we saw with 3RS is that cost overrun and delays. So cost overruns become the norm in government projects, like we discussed in the HCMB. While we hope the government should play the role of the gatekeeper, even though it's not doing that much of a good job. And now that we have the XRL cost overrun and the Sha-Tin Central Link cost overruns, and now whatever the government have promised have failed to deliver, and now the government hope to retain this position, and now they want to retain this post to 2025. So what can you deliver, and what is the cost overrun situation? And now that the pro-establishment can have annulled the subcommittee on the 3rd runway, which we can't discuss there anymore. And in this period, there's no way to monitor their work, and now that you're asking for this extend this position to 2025, I'm very against this. This is quite outrageous. If you're able to deliver, probably in midterm, then so we keep on providing you the people and resources, and yet you're not able to control the accounts and let it delay. And most severely, I would like to know the progress, because we rely on the government and as well as the aviation administration and the military actions, where we met stiff resistance that whether the 3RS is feasible. And recently, I'm aware of the meeting in Beijing for this, However, I never see any public statement to assure us that this 3RS can be commissioned. Instead of that, we had dilly-dallying and claiming of a regional corporation. The regional corporation, but at the end, may give all the slots to the nearby airports like Shenzhen or Guangzhou Baiyun Airport. I'm quite concerned that from now to 2025, for the 7 years, the administration will not have to come back to LegCo. So, how bad is the situation? And can you confirm with me over 60 billion would be spent on buying sands from China? I wonder if it would climb in price as it's quite fluctuating. It's more like a seller's market, and it's rather quite profitable. So can you give us some information, Mr. Lai?
I'll say something, then I'll defer to my colleague to elaborate. The works started in August 2016 up to now. There has not been a cost overrun. And there is also no question about delay. I'm not talking about now. I'm talking about the future. P.S. Well, I'll just report to you the situation today. And the AHK has every confidence that, going by what we're saying today, the project can be completed. The 3RS entire works can be completed by 2024 and within budget. And in terms of airspace, we are working very hard and closely with the mainland authorities on the use of airspace so that there would be a win-win situation for the use of airspace in Pearl River Delta region. And there would be 102 air traffic movements in Hong Kong daily. And in Shenzhen, Guangzhou, Macau, and Zhuhai, they can also use such airspace. I'll ask Mr. Zhang to elaborate. Mr. Zhang, we are now proceeding with reclamation work. DCM, deep cement mixing, has been going on. There will be solidification of the deep level sediments. And with regard to filling materials, contractors, apart from using sea sand and also using some other types of sand from the quarries in mainland. And if needed, the sea sand is manufactured by machine. And then on our part, we do have our own landfill facilities, public fill reception facilities, and the contractor is talking to the CDD to make the best use of public fill. Now, what about the budget? There is no cost overrun. How much did you spend on the sea sand? This is a commercial secret. And we are sourcing our sand from different sources, public fill in Hong Kong, sea sand, and also machine-made sand as well. So we try to minimize the cost by using these different types of fill materials. Mr. Eddie G. First round, Mr. G. Thank you, Madam Chair. Today, you have submitted a supplementary paper, and it says that the government has set up this strategic committee on 3RS and North Commercial District, is headed by the FS. The LegCo and the public do not know about when it was established, what is the membership, what has been discussed, and what major decisions have been made. We're not clear about that. So can the PS say something about that first? Thank you, Madam Chair. For this steering committee, as set in the paper, is chaired by the FS. The members comprise the relevant officers from the policy decision, policy bureaus, and implementation departments. Of course, representatives from AHK are also included. This is very much a high-level steering committee, and we'll have a comprehensive monitoring on the project. As to the day-to-day monitoring work, the responsibility falls on THB and also the APCO. And the FS is steering this very high-level steering committee to provide high-level steer to the project, and he would let different bureau directors the latest progress of the works. The committee has worked for over several years, and actually, when the steering committee was established right after the 3RS project was approved. How many meetings had it have been held, and when was it established? If you want to know the specifics, can Mr. Zhang provide the information as far as my memory serves me? And after the Executive Council approved for the 3RS, the steering committee was set up, and they hold, say, 1 to 2 meetings every year. It's a high-level committee, and it gives the senior management or senior level of the government the information on the overall progress of the project. So 1 to 2 meetings are held annually. For the public and the LegCo, our expectation is that we'll be given the information of the discussions of the steering committee, say starting from 2014, and also the decisions they made. Can you give us a paper on that? Can that be done? Yes, we can do so after the meeting. And will it continue to operate until, say, 2025, when this post expires? Is it the steering committee operating continuously? Yes, it will continue to operate, at least till the 3RS project has been completed. On top of 3RS, it is also responsible for the North Commercial District. So how is the progress of that other project? So can I defer to Mr. Lau? Yes, thank you, member, for your question. The North Commercial District is one of the major projects for the AAHK in the next few years. And last week, our tender was closed, and the AAHK staff were analyzing the tenders submitted. Now, after it is completed, it is actually a major center for catering, retail, and entertainment. And we believe that it can enhance the competitive edge of the international airport in Hong Kong. That's my update so far. We haven't actually looked at the tenders. Can I supplement? Yes. Mr. Zhu referred to the steering committee. It was established in 2014, and 5 meetings were held. 2014 established, and it will continue operating, right? Yes. Dr. Kwokaki, second round. Madam Chair, I still want to follow up on the cost issue. You said that you used at least 3 ways to find the reclamation materials in order not to exceed the budget. The sand is doubling or increasing several times in its cost. When will you actually know exactly when the reclamation as a whole will cost? And you have the administrative officer post and 2 engineers post in your proposal. In terms of cost control, will it be undertaken by the engineers and that the AO is not responsible for controlling the cost? And if that is the case, why do we have to keep this post? I think the posts are there to make sure that there is no cost overrun. So, and why don't you do it also by a phased approach? You haven't answered my earlier question. The 3RS, after it's been commissioned, maybe no air flights are allowed. Do you have any updated news for us? Because your agreement has never been disclosed to the electrical members. And you said that there will be air traffic movements in the future, definitely. I mean, do you have any confidence that you can really do that? Professor Anthony Zhang was the last secretary, and has the situation improved? You know that Mr. Jack Chan is very capable. He said that he would like to build relationship with the mainland authorities, and he's also been very friendly with the head of the Civil Aviation Administration of China. Can you give us a paper? Let me take the last question of Dr. Kwok, then I will ask Mr. Zhang to take the other questions. With regard to airspace, as I said, in the past few years, we've been working closely with the mainland authorities, and we've achieved some achievements. In Hong Kong and PRD region, we have increased some airspace transfer points, and we have actually changed the structure of the airspace, and we have enhanced the communication mechanism, i.e. the CAD is exchanging more information with mainland airports, and so the air control, air traffic management can be done better, and within the same airspace region, more air flights can be accommodated. And recently, the CAAC has put in a fast time simulation with us. Fast time simulation and airspace study. We use real data to simulate that in the future, if the air flight number will increase in the future, how can the air traffic management be done better? As a result, Hong Kong can have 102 air traffic movements on a daily basis. And then at the same time, the PRD airports can still expand their capacity. On the question of sand, Mr. Zhang, please. On sand and reclamation projects, the plan is that by 2020-22, a new runway will be commissioned, and the entire project will be completed of 3RS will be completed by 2024, and then reclamation has to be completed by 2021. For projects in relation to the buildings, passenger terminal, etc., can wait. So we will be knowing, we'll be be able to know the exact cost for the sand by 2021 and 2022. And based on the supply of different materials, we may change our plan, and we will also be using inert construction materials in public fill. And if sea sand gets too costly, we will maybe sourcing from other coastal cities on the mainland. So this is ongoing. And also there is manufactured sand. So at least there are 3 sources. Maybe if sand from the mainland is getting even if costly, we will try to source from other Southeast Asian regions. So this is what we are considering. You talk about 2021, but your contract does not last till 2021. It may go beyond that. So you have signed the contract. There is nothing much you can do. You talk about inert construction materials and also public fill in Hong Kong. Of course, we want to use those. Are these materials less costly so that we don't have to use so much sea sand on the mainland? Dr. Kwok, you have gone over time. I retreat you as asking for the third time just now. Dr. Kwok, you talked about the inert materials in the fill banks. AAHK, to my understanding, hopes to use as much as possible that kind of material. Of course, it has to do with costs, and it can save costs. And more importantly, it's also more environmentally friendly. We want to use as much such material, say, in AHK projects or government projects. The prime consideration is whether such materials are fit for reclamation projects. And I'll ask Mr. Zhang to supplement on the technical side. And we also have to be considering the transport issues and also the screening of the materials and so on. So Mr. Zhang's office has all along been liaising with the different policy bureaus and AAHK on that. Mr. Zhang. And for the reclamation contract that has already been signed, and it has also been uploaded onto the AHK's website. The contract sum is there. So the contract has been signed. But, you get claims all the time. So that's not the real figure, I would say. So that's why we need to source from different sources the fill to make sure that we don't have to spend too much on it. And as the PS said, we would also be looking at inert construction materials as well. Now, for inert construction materials, they have being now stored in the public fields, temporary public fields in Tuen Mun and Tuen Mun. They come from different projects. And the AAHK's contractor will actually set up some facilities in Tuen Mun public field reception facility to try to screen out things not suitable for use. And also in reclamation, we have to be very concerned about fine content. It should not be too much to the extent that it will affect the water quality. So we have to take samples to make sure that these fine materials will make up a lesser percentage of the fill materials so that water quality will not be undermined. So we are talking to the CEDD and the EPD on this.
And because due to transport it from TKO to our site is quite far, and to go through Victoria Harbour, so the whole sea transport route we need to negotiate with the THB. And you haven't mentioned the cost, the price, or what is, well, in a contract, it covered the fill materials, the cost the same, so it can still file claim. It's too expensive, and actually, the public filling materials would have been factored into the price. If there are no other questions, Dr. Chang, first round. This proposed positions are more on the practical and on the construction preparation work, including the principal government engineer. And as the head of the EPCO, this new office under the THB, this may not be much relevance to the financial arrangements. However, on Paris 17, it laid out the financial arrangements for the 3RS. Chairman, if you pay attention the way they wrote it, which I think is quite interesting, and for the last few lines, and while the financial arrangement is being implemented, the EPCO will continue to liaise with AHK and provide input or advice on the detailed funding plan in consultation with the relevant bureaus and departments as and when appropriate. It seems that the implication is that the financial arrangements will have some changes. So how substantial are these changes, and how much would that will be due to the other issues? For example, the price adjustment of raw materials and labor cost adjustments and so on, or due to other factors. So we're talking about over 140 billion for the total cost of 3RS. And in the past, there have been a lot of speculation or rumors that the cost must overrun, and the scale will be quite high. So probably we're not able to finish unless get to $200 billion. So I wonder what's the responsibilities of this office to provide a suggestion or advice. If for such mega-scale project, there should incur a substantial cost overrun. What other financing channels are available? So, Secretary, and would you foresee that there will be such a huge cost overrun? In response to the member's question, up to today, I can say that there's no indication that this project will have cost overruns. Of course, it is still at a very early stage and will not be completed by 2024. As of today, there's no sign that it will overrun in cost. And one of the major roles of EPCO is to help the government to monitor the work of AHK to ensure that there will not be indeed any cost overruns. So that will be an important area of our work. Referring to Paris 17 of Dr. Chung's question, as you may recall, the AHK mentioned that there will be three major ways to fund for this 140 billion cost, about half of which will be through issuing debentures or borrowing. About 30% will be financed through the AHK operating surplus. About 20% will be paid through the airport construction fee levy. And the last line, Paris 17, is about 25% of the cost will be met through debentures and bank borrowing. And how the AHK would borrow or issue bonds, the AHK and through Electrical or through Economic Advisory Committee have already presented. They're still coming up ideas and not confirmed. For example, whether they would issue retail bonds and so on. These are still being considered. So the Paris 70 is referring to that before the AHK finalized the plans, the government will offer it advice. Dr. Kwok? So that Dr. Kwok is waiving their tax and so on. Brief reply. It's not the government waiving the AHK. It's the AHK decided not to pay dividends for the time being. Fourth round, Dr. Kwok, I've been asking the Permanent Secretary all along that whether there any piece of paper of proof that the Electrico have been waiting for this piece of paper since the previous term, that for the airspace agreement. So there's no such thing. So you've told us of all this simulations, calculation. This isn't any agreement. Secretary, Every time we meet with the CAAC, for example, at the bureau level or at the department level, and afterwards we have a very comprehensive press release to give a clean account of the developments. And these press releases have been cleared with CAC before published. So these are periodic updates. So you have no agreements, so we keep on having so many meetings in these years. There's no such piece of paper. If you have it, just show it to us. Chairman, I think that this is a work in progress. So it's just based on trust. Chairman, we have some concrete proof. So if we even issue a press release to allow what we've been doing, this has been agreed between the two governments. Secretary, I'm asking about the agreement. So this was different from the press release because the press release, we mentioned only a chunk of the entire agreement. You just can't just send us away with so little. Can you provide us formal document if available? If not, just tell us no. Just only say the press release is available. And for Dr. Squall's asking about the 2007 agreement, I believe that you all be aware of the government's position that this is a confidential agreement. However, the main contents have been disclosed in various channels. And subsequently, and the 2007 agreement was served as a basis for the subsequent work. It's time's up. Okay, we have Mr. Ray Chan, first round. And Chairman, because we have 3 meetings concurrently in 2 of them to public hearings, and now there's actually no members present in one of the public hearings. Oh, that's very unsatisfactory. Okay, if my question have been raised by any members, please let me know. So back in 2015, when the government first proposed this position, asking him to be run to 2018, I've asked the government that you extended these positions by 2 years and 4 months. Was it too short? Every time when this establishment proposals that we know to have to go through a lot of procedures, FC and so on, and prove that our prediction is correct. And now these 2 supernumerary positions have now applied to LegCo 3 times. So 2002 asked for the establishment of the EPCO office, and now the 2015 to extend this post for 2 years and 4 months, and the 3rd time is today, as extended for 7 years. So by 2024, 5 to 3, these positions have been created for 13 years. So every time their position is different. This time these posts are for on the engineering side. And the administration do the math. We haven't gotten dividends from AHK, so we'll be losing billions of dollars every year. And at the same time, we need to help the EPCO to supervise AHK to build 3RS. And up to this day, how much have this EPCO spent, and how much expenditure is expected to incurred from 2018 onwards? Secretary, can you provide such figures? First of all, thanks for the Mr. Chan's concern for us. I remember I was at the same meeting back in 2012. Back then, I said that we need to look for the actual manpower need upon the commencement, and then we shall come back to LegCo, hopefully to get the support to create this post of longer duration. Concerning the 3 positions, their salaries and so on, and for the costs incurred, that has already been laid out in the document. As for the expenditure for the entire EPCO, maybe I'll let Mr. Chang to give a brief overview. And for referring to paragraph 26, that we have 11 non-directorate posts, staff. So paragraph 26, So every year, the cost is at about 12 million. As for these 3 posts as to be created to 2025, so does that mean it's really the very last chapter? So will you come back to LegCo by 2025? Because there's bound to be issues, and then we're not going to expectation, cost overruns, and claims. So would the post we have to handle this sort of claims? Would the HK manage by themselves, and the government would not need to help? And for the highways department's positions, they claim they need to see that needs to finalize the accounts, and then within 1 or 2 years, whether any disputes or pay claims, so the position would have to be retained. Secretary, if there are any claims or any contractual disputes, depends on the nature of the project. The HK will need to take it up themselves. If there are any extra spending to contractors, that will be borne by the AHK. That shall not pay through the government's coffers.
As for these 3 posts, whether they should be last up till 2024 and 25. Well, we made that proposal after careful consideration or assessment of the situation based on what's happening today. So the works should be completed by 2024. And we have allowed for, say, several months for the post to do some wrapping up work as well. So this timetable is in line with what we know today. I just last word. So maybe after the works have been completed, you need still 1 to 2 months to wrap it up. So then that means that this process will end, right? Is it going to be 2024, 24? So the period is synchronizes with the work schedule, right? Yes. I don't see any special reason that warrant the continuation of these posts after the works have been or the project has been completed. So members, do you have any further questions? Yes. Second round. 2 other members. Mr. Eddie Zhu, second round. Dr. Zhang, second round. Mr. Zhu, you go first. Thank you. Madam Chair, we have 3 meetings today. We have a hard time. So please pay attention to this. Make sure that this won't happen again. We'll talk to them. There is no reason why we should have 3 meetings going on concurrently. We're just jumping around. It's just like we are athletes here, running all about the place. Now, Mr. Zhang gave a figure. He said that there will be a final estimate in 2021. Are you referring to the sand, the cost of the sand? Can you recall? I didn't get it very clearly. So let me explain. The member was asking about the reclamation works. The contract for reclamation has been signed already. And the budget will not change, right? Yes, of course. So unless there are force majeure situation coming up, then we know how much sand we need. But as to the type of sand to be used, we will know that later on. But the contract means they would undertake all the work. What do you mean by 2021 when you talk about it? We have to reclaim a major, substantial part of the runway. Now, in the 3RS subcommittee, I didn't get a reply, but I still want to raise the same question here. Many colleagues were very worried about cost overrun for 3RS. I'm not worried about that yet. I am worried that it will not be completed on schedule. Now, I have noticed that in the 2030 plus study, it is said that there will be a double Y shape passenger building, and they said that in 2014 the cost was around $136 billion at the money of the day prices, and in 2015, well, there was no this Y design anymore. There was just one side, the right wing for the passenger building. It's the cost is $145.1 billion. I have this question all the time, that the building will not be completed. And in other words, this now there will be the first phase of the 3RS, and then there will be a follow-up phase of the 3RS. Is that the case? Can you be clearer on that point? When we talk about the double Y design, so what is the cost now? Or do you think that you have abandoned the idea, or what? Or would you be going back to the double Y design in the future? Yes, would there be another wing of the Y to be built in the future? In the long term, we will not rule out that there is a need to do that. But AAHK, before proceeding with the 3RS, they has carefully considered and assessed the situation, and they think that for this single Y design now, it is able to cope with the needs up to 2030. So this is the parameter that we are using. Now, in the longer term, is there a need to build another side of the Y? That's something for the long term. Well, we're talking about 2030 plus, so we're talking about 2040 already. So if you make calculations up to 2030, you shouldn't call it long term. It's just a short term, because we are now already in 2018. So when will you exactly tell us you will build this other wing of the Y building? We don't have a specific timetable now. The AHK is taking forward this 3RS project. We have just one wing in the Y design, and that should suffice. Dr. Zhang, second round. I know that the government is not waiving the interest from the AHK. It's such that the AHK decides not to issue any dividends. Now, the entire airport is wholly owned by the government, and the AAHK Board of Director members were appointed by the Hong Kong government. If the government doesn't give the nod, then the AHK will not dare to say that it will not issue dividends in 10 years' time. You claim that this is a decision solely on the part of the AHK, is not the government waiving this dividend. Well, that sounds reasonable on the surface, but I believe that it can only be done on the premise that the government say that it will waive the dividend receipt. Now, I noticed mid last year you should have completed this financial consultants report, which is on the detailed financing proposal or solutions, and that of course includes the information on the progress of works, the cash flow needed, the borrowing, raising funds options, and also how the phased financing situation would be like. And can you disclose this consultant report so that the public is made aware of the situation? Who would take that question, please? Madam Chair? So my colleague can supplement later for the financing options or proposal. It has already been made public. Dr. Zhang, in response to your first point, I don't want to have a debate with you here, but please appreciate that in terms of corporate governance, we have to be be clear that it's the decision of the AHK not to issue dividends. It's not the government deciding not to receive the dividends. Mr. Zhang, if I remember correctly, in September last year, I can check the exact date later on, the 3RS, well, actually, AHK has come to report to the electrical subcommittee on the 3RS financing, and the paper has been submitted to the electrical. Now, the financing, $68.9 billion have to be raised through the market, and some of them are commercial loans, loans from commercial banks, organizational bonds, green bonds, retail bonds, etc. And all these are set out in the paper. I can say loans from commercial banks, $20 to $30 billion, institutional bonds, $23 billion to $33 billion, $23 billion to $33 billion, and U.S. bonds, Hong Kong bonds, 70 to 80 billion. Some of them are green bonds, and retail bonds around $5 billion. A total amount is $68.9 billion. Now, these are all detailed in last year's paper. That's available on the website. That should be in the website of the 3RS subcommittee. I can tell you exactly which paper is it. Dr. Kwok Kaki, 5th round, please. Madam Chair, I have asked this question, which has not been answered. You have 2 engineers, and we understand about those. They have to look at the works. But what about the AO? He will not be responsible for overseeing the cost. I believe that this will be the ambit of the engineer staff. Well, for the AO staff, just like what we did in the past, maybe we'll allow for 3 years for the post, and then after that, you should come back and update you on the progress of his duties. I'm just worried that they will not come back after they've got the funding from us. And I noticed that he has to take on a lot of responsibilities, like the marine parks. You know that the environmental sectors, that the government has been stalling the matter so much. And so how is the progress of the marine parks? So can I defer to Mr. Zhang to talk about marine parks and about the post lasting up to 2025? Mr. Raymond Chen has spoken about our mind. We need to have a continuity in the post, and we are proceeding in full steam with the project. So there is indeed a need for us to align the length of the post together with the project schedule. It doesn't mean that we will not come back after we've got funding from you, as we know that we have undertaken to go to the Economic Development Panel to regularly update you on the latest progress of the project. We will come to you twice every year, and at some other occasions we can also report the progress. For example, through oral questions, written questions raised by members at the council, we would also be giving you an account of our work progress. Mr. Zhang, marine parks. For the 2,400-hectare marine park, well, environmental issues are involved, and we have to be mindful about the marine safety issues as well, because there is the Armstrong Road, so we have to be mindful about the safety of navigation at that channel, and we have to build public facilities so that people can still appreciate the Chinese white dolphins there, where the facilities should be provided. The AHK will be conducting a 3-phase consultation, and the first phase was conducted in end of 2016, we have collected views from the relevant policy bureaus and departments, and we are now proceeding with the design study of the marine park. And there will be a second phase consultation towards the end of this year, and the delineation of the marine park will be done after, or the destination will be done after the commissioning of the 3RS. The member asked a number of questions about the post of the AO, who will be responsible for coordination among government departments on the project. And I mentioned that there was the steering committee chaired by the FS, and also there is an advisory committee set up, and there are so many documents to be prepared for this meeting, and that's the work of this AO as well. And there will be questions raised by electrical members on this 3RS project, and we have to come back to update you on the progress of works. So this AO is going to be responsible for all these works, and maybe we have to liaise with the mainland authorities on various spheres in relation to the sand and also environmental issues and so on. So this all these areas come within the ambit of the AO.
Mr. Chu, I take third round. So the Permanent Secretary's response to my questions, I was quite surprised. So for our urban development, talking about 2030 plus to the tune of 2040, and yet our airport only project till 2030. And now the strictly now claim that for the single Y design that it will be adequate till 2030. So would it be at one out of capacity by 2031? He can't answer that. So I have a specific questions. Now we're still using this 2010 AHK planning outline. And AHK have its master plan before 2010 for every 5 years. Using a 20-year projection time frame, and now that we don't have a master plan that project till after 2030, and now after we finish building the single Y by 2030, it could be reach full capacity, and yet we're not prepared to meet whatever happened or increase in passenger flow or goods cargo flow after 2031. You plan to build another airport or build another Y passenger building. So at 2018, it's time to come clean to the public. Thank you for Mr. Chu's question. So Mr. Chu is thinking further than us. What happened for 2035 or onwards. So Mr. Chu has a point that this 3RS is based on the MP 2030, the Master Plan of 2030. The AHK is currently drafting a master planning for 2035. From my understanding, is still being prepared. I believe that once it's ready, there will be a comprehensive public engagement. By then, I will use that agreed master plan to plan for further development of our airport. Today, we come to the establishment subcom to seek funding to support the manpower deployment for this APCO, and this manpower will be used on the 3RS. And respond to Mr. Chu, this is all based on the single Y passenger building. So whatever happened in the future will be dealt in the future. So for such a long-run question, you could probably raise that in the relevant policy panel. I disagree with you, Chairman. So you can't even answer what happened after 2031. So they should submit the new master plan by 2015 by the airport authority. So by now, 2018 is 3 years overdue. So they come to drafting their master plan. So when is it ready? Can you give us a date? Mr. Chu, fourth round. Chairman, as I know that is underway, so can they able to provide it within this year? I can't answer for them. So I can tell you that it's being prepared. So I can provide information after the meeting. Chairman, this is a very serious matter. Now that we have a single Y passenger building for the 3RS project, and now that they feel that the project seems to be quite completed, and now that they could prepare it to build another Y building or even a new airport, and yet it's only supposed to meet only the needs after 2030, and they would not discuss it with disclose to us. So even if I approve this funding and let this post can be retained, they haven't quite answered the key questions. The THB have been letting the public and the electrical down, like in the previous SCMB project. And your written response is just claimed that their plan is not ready. However, HK is wholly owned by the government. It's not the MTRCL, in which there are minority shareholders by the public or institutional investors. AHK is wholly owned by the government. So how can you just shift it to the AHK? Can you tell us now when will the 2035 master plan be disclosed? What year would it be made public? Can you answer that? Chairman, as for your suggestion, I can reply after the meeting. Okay, let's be practical. We're talking about the 3RS today. It's just you being impractical, Secretary. So we prepare to answer questions on the 3RS. So after 3RS be completed, for any longer-term operation needs, that will be involving another project. One more question for me, Chairman. Fifth round. So the AHK has given an AA plus rating by the Standard & Poor's. So I written to Standard & Poor's that in many occasions the SAR government said that they would not cover for any cost overrun for the 3RS project. For any issues, HK would need to bear their cost itself. And yes, then the rating agency replied that this AA plus rating is based on the view that the SAR government will almost certain will provide extraordinary support in the event of financial difficulty. So I would like the administration to explain, and now that we have this good cop bad cop. On one hand, you claim that the AHK will handle by itself. However, the credit agency have a different views, and they say that it's wholly owned by the government, and they're almost certain that you will cover for any cost overrun. It seems to be self-conflicting. Can you tell the credit agencies that the SKRG will not cover for the AHK if they can't finish on budget? Secretary, I should not in the position to comment on the interaction between a member and a credit agency. The government has agreed or greenlight this project is based on a key consideration that AAHK had undertaken that the cost of the 3RS will be borne fully by AHK itself. So that's how we green light this project. And the HK have not made such promises lightly because they have engaged an independent financial consultant to evaluate for any potential downside risk, which including let's say projecting a 50% increase in construction costs, and even taking into account the scenarios, AHK can able to meet their capital needs. So you claim that HK will bear the cost by itself. On the other hand, so the government will not offer any help. So now that they will issue bonds to HSBC. So why are people taking up these bonds? Because people will get the impression that the Standard & Poor's get A+ rating, and this rating is given because the HG thinks that the government will lend a hand in any case. So can you make it clear that you would not give them a hand? I think we made it very clear. So our assumption is that they will bear all the cost. Chairman, we still have only 5 minutes left. If there are no any questions, we shall put it to the vote. We want to call it division. Okay, let's ring the bell. We don't have a quorum. Let's ring the bell first. Let's get some more members in the room. Let's extend the meeting by 15 more minutes. Please ring the bell.
而家開始。
Voting begins. Please, before I declare the results, please check your votes. Voting ends. Display of results. 14 present, 5 for, 8 against. The motion is negatived. That's the end of the meeting. On Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. we'll have another meeting. While the weather will get a bit warmer, 1 to 2 degrees lower.